Get ready for this creepy story. It's gonna be spooky.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
Before we get started, I am Ji-woon, aka the Trickster, so I am the Trickster. And this is my Halloween costume. So let's get into the story.
Alrighty, what's up guys? Single Player Nacho here, and we're back with another creepy lore video. This time on the Trickster from Dead by Daylight. Hands down the sexiest Simp Creator 3000, and the most love it or hate it character in the game. This guy is a musician from hell, and the sounds that inspire him are those of his dying victims, which he uses in his own records. That's pretty creative, Ji-woon, and good on you for recycling. And the Trickster's victims span from die-hard fans, no pun intended, or upcoming artists looking for Ji-woon's advice. He took all these poor bastards backstage and chopped them. Bloodshed and torturous melodies filled the Trickster's infatuation with himself and obsession with his godly looks, which all made him go completely insane. So let's take a closer look at the Trickster and see what the fuss is all about. He has this large yellow pimp coat, which is like a huge red flag. I don't know how any of his victims suspected something was up with this guy. And Ji-woon's body is plastered with blood. Interestingly though, these splotches look like bullet wounds, but it's more traditional blood spatter from beating the shit out of people. And the single most intriguing visual aspect of the Trickster. You take a closer look at his eyes and there's tears. I might be going out on a limb here, but I believe Ji-woon gets emotional when he hears the dying breaths and sounds of his victims, and it makes him cry. It's pretty screwed up, but that's a really cool attention to detail right there. So where did it all begin? Is there a point in time in Ji-woon's story that created this volatile personality? And is there something there that helps us better understand Ji-woon's obsession? Flashing lights, the screams of a crazed audience. They all yelled in unison, Ji-woon. On stage, the Trickster was in love with being loved by millions and millions of fans, but something began bothering him. A tug at his ear, a different sound from the crowd, words, the names of his other bandmates. The crowd's love began being split into 4 different people, and Ji-woon shuddered at the idea of not being the center of attention. Violent, murderous thoughts surged through Ji-woon's mind. There just wasn't enough love to be split. He wanted it all. He quickly began seeing his bandmates as a problem. Just like any other day, No Spin was hard at work at the studio. Upon arriving, Ji-woon smells burning flesh. He enters the lobby and it is filled with black smoke. Cries are heard throughout the building. Ji-woon rushes inside the studio. Through the glass encasement, sees his band members burning, their flesh slowly melting away as they bang on the walls and the door, desperately trying to move these gigantic speakers that were in front of the exit, though their weakened and burned limbs barely gave them any strength to do so. It was Ji-woon's time to put away all of the bitterness, the love-hate relationship with his band members. He had to save them, but tears start flowing down Ji-woon's face. His bandmates' voices, their cries for help. It was a beautiful sound to Ji-woon. The more they cried, the less it gave Ji-woon reason to unblock the exit. He lets go of the fallen speakers, backs off and smiles as all his bandmates rot in a flame-filled grave. The somber headlines commemorated the 4 members of No Spin, young, talented, and they would never meet their potential. The headlines also painted Ji-woon in a different light. The hero, the single band member that escaped the harsh flames that burned down their studio. So people came to him, they searched for Ji-woon to shelter him or to seek advice. People with good hearts and good intentions. Unfortunately, Ji-woon's was clearly the opposite. Ji-woon's fascination with struggling artists gave him an idea. To him, these people had talent, but the emotion just wasn't there. The emotion must be brought out forcefully if it has to. One violent swing of his bat is all it took to knock out this poor college music student who thought he trusted the Trickster. And the Trickster ties the student up, puts a rag in his mouth, and starts desecrating the student's entire body. Limb by limb, the Trickster dissects this poor student, searching for the perfect sound. The Trickster, in his newly found talent, makes sure to go about this slowly. A very slow and torturous death for this young, up-and-coming, lost soul. That rag in the student's mouth kept everything silent, so the Trickster did not find the perfect sound. He needed a more quiet place, something more soundproof, to take his victims in. What did the Trickster choose? An abandoned building. This empty, condemned place would be filled with screams, gorgeous melodies out of the mouths of the Trickster's victims. One by one, he would bring them in, targeted each and every little nerve to find the perfect note. It was a very bloody and violent ordeal. The Trickster even set up a makeshift studio to record these sounds, make sure he got every last one. The Trickster even became somewhat of an anatomy expert, researching which was the most pain-inducing part of the body that can be stabbed. The quadratus lumborum, the lower ab section, is what Ji-woon loved poking. For that specific part of the body, brought out the most gorgeous sound out of the tortured victims. It brought tears to Ji-woon's eyes. He had to implement these sounds into his upcoming solo album. But his music work was delayed because of his newly found art project. The various interesting designs, sculptures he left behind through his killings. The police didn't know where to begin. His little hints included putting a mink boa, a high-fashioned scarf, around a victim's ripped throat. In another instance, he completely removed every single tooth out of a man's mouth. And this is probably the craziest kill out of Ji-woon's career. A fan that begged and begged for Ji-woon's attention. Kind of pissed him off. Interesting, because this was a replicated behavior that Ji-woon exhibited. He was the one that constantly needed attention. So he saw this fan also displaying that, so he decided to kill her very viciously. He took out her eyeballs, placed diamonds in them, and slashed words across her chest. I have seen God. Extremely disturbing, but the sounds of his dying victims provided a very human touch, a feel to Ji-woon's new solo project. Unfortunately, a lot of people weren't having it, including Mighty One Entertainment. The music was just a little bit too raw for their more corporate taste. They planned to either let Ji-woon go, or he would have to abide by their rules and have a more mainstream sound to him. This enraged the Trickster to no end. It was laughable, painful to hear. He was obsessed with his more holistic approach to music. In other words, the sounds of torture. Mighty One Entertainment gave Ji-woon 3 months to prepare a very private show. This was the Trickster's last shot to please Mighty One Entertainment or to become a failed lost artist forever. Dozens were in attendance, including Yeonjin Lee. They all gawked and laughed at Ji-woon's recent antics, his music too shallow, too emotional, and behind the curtain, the Trickster heard every last bit of it. The Trickster arrives to the stage, microphone at hand, and before he even started singing, smoke fills the entire audience. They cough and cough until all of the Mighty One Entertainment board members are unconscious. Ji-woon looks around and laughs. He was the one that set nitrous oxide to fill the entire stage. He was the one in control of his own destiny and his own sound, using his sharpest knife, targeting the most painful nerve endings. He slashed all of the audience members down to an unrecognizable mush. Though they were somewhat numb because of the nitrous oxide, they still cried out for their mothers, their family. They begged Ji-woon to stop the violence, and this was dozens of Mighty One Entertainment board members, maybe even more than dozens. The entire concert hall, the floor filled with puddles of blood, the walls lined with a red goo. All of their sounds, in unison, provided a beautiful orchestra piece in the eyes of Ji-woon. This was his last act. This was his masterpiece. All of the emotion through their dead, gurgling sounds. It was perfect. And the last victim, Yoon-jin, still alive. They locked eyes with each other, though the Trickster could have let her go. After all, she was the one that gave him all of this fame and opportunity to explore his brutal side. He begins making his way towards her. He smiles, and then a blinding fog surrounds the Trickster, and he disappears, never to be seen again. What was left behind? An enormous bloodbath that police would question for decades. A mystery never to be solved. Who killed all of these people? These powerful suits? Who was the one behind these art-like death scenes? It was all one man, obsessed with a human approach to music, obsessed with love for himself. The emotional resonance needed to cater to Ji-woon Hak's ego was larger than life. In fact, larger than many lives. Regardless, the mysterious disappearance of the Trickster, his final solo project, filled with the death sounds of his own victims. And these records would be played over and over again, streamed by his adoring fans. Little did they know, they easily could have participated in record producing. Not intentionally, of course. Ji-woon Hak's brutal melodies would fill the minds of music fans. These tracks were as timeless as the lives they cost to produce. Well, that was...
Well, what did you guys think about that story? Creepy video story. And what do you guys think about my costume? Let me know down in the comments below. And peekaboo, I see you. The creatures are coming to get you.